Let's talk about how you would design a fork. So one of the things that you need to think about when making a fork is the width of the wheel. So these wheels are 60 millimeters wide and they're about 230 millimeters in diameter. If you have a look at this particular fork, there's an extra little tab at the bottom, and this tab allows the axle to go up and down a fraction. And that way, if you accidentally have the hole in the wrong spot, you can move the wheel so that the wheel is either straight or tilted a little bit, and you can make some adjustments. If you look at this project, they're using 5 millimeter thick by 25 millimeter thick flat bar for this piece. They're using 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter square tubing for this piece. These are some parts that have been cut on an angle, and then it's welded together. One of the problems with this one is that there's actually no clearance in here. So it actually rubs and doesn't go very smoothly. Let's now look at some other options. So again, this could be substituted with a thicker piece of material, and you might simply just have a hole drilled in the end. If there is a hole drilled in the end, your axle will go through the hole, but it doesn't allow for any movement up and down. So that could cause a problem. It means that you then have to drill two holes identical on the left and right side of your wheel. Now you could substitute this by adding on a little plate like that, and this allows you again to have a bit of movement or adjustment, but it means you then have to make two pieces. And that's how the students made this particular. So that's that one right there, you see. This is made from 30, so 30 this way, by 30 that way, 30 by 30 square tubing. That's a lot thicker, as you can tell. Let's look at some potential samples. So here's a basic fork. I've got the wheel at 60 wide, 230 tall, and I need to think about the gap in between so that the wheel doesn't rub. Anywhere between 5 and 10 millimeters on each side would suffice. My material for the fork could be 20 to 30 millimeters. And if you did want to have these little tabs, they are about 5 millimeters thick this way. And probably about 50 millimeters this way. So as an overview, that kind of gets you started. Let's transport now to my sample. So here's my sample. This would be a sample drawing that I would put down into my paper. Now, idea one, it could come up straight, and I might have an angled cut. Idea two, it comes up, and you have simply a butt join. So two different ways to join it, or you might even actually have your fork look something like this. So that might be your fork as an example. It takes a bit more working out to do. So back to my work. If I chose to make this 20 millimeter wide steel for my fork, and I've got a gap in here, which is the width of my wheel, and I made that gap, let's pretend that I made that gap 70 in the middle. So I got 70 plus 5 and 5 is 80, plus 20 is 120, 100, and another 20 is 120. So that's how I figured out I need 120 as the width. For the height, I know that my wheel would probably come up somewhere in this zone here. So again, here's my wheel, and I know that the wheel is 230 tall. So half the wheel is 115. So here's the middle of my wheel. So if I come up 115 millimeters, I need to make this piece at least 115. That way, it allows some space for a little gap at the top. In my project, on this particular example, I made it 125. And that gives me a little tiny gap at the top of about 10 millimeters. So overall, this would be my basic fork sketch. Come up with what it is that you want for your fork, and then draw that on your paper.